Since the inception of DeepSeek in 2025 when they released their flagship R1 model, we've had several open source models like Qwen, Kimi, VLM. They've all been competing for dominance alongside the closed source models. On July 31st, 2026, DeepSeek yet again released another model which is tagged the V4 Flash 0731. Usually, to get a smart model, you build a bigger model, but DeepSeek took their existing lightweight flash architecture, which has a total of about 284 billion parameters and uses exactly 13 billion per token, and ran it through a brand new post-training phase. And the result of this, the budget efficiency focused model actually beats DeepSeek's own flagship 1.6 trillion parameter pro model on autonomous agent benchmark. Today, I'm going to break down the mathematics of its mixture of experts engine, the new hash routing layers, and how it handles a 1 million token contest window. And finally, what actually changed in July 31st post-training phase to make it such a dominant coding model. The engine underneath the 0721 release is a hyper-optimized mixture of experts. In a traditional AI model, every virtual neuron fires for every single word. V4 Flash replaces these massive layers with hundreds of tiny specialized subnetworks. But V4 introduces a new trick early in the network. For the very first layer, it uses hash routing. Instead of doing complex maths to decide where a token should go, it uses a predefined hash function based on the token's ID. It's a hard-coded shortcut that instantly categorizes data at the start of the pipeline without wasting compute. Now, once the network gets deeper, it switches to a standard router. To put this into a real-world perspective, imagine this entire architecture as a hyper-efficient 284,000 doctor mega hospital. In a traditional dense model, when a patient walks in with a minor cough, all 284,000 doctors in the building stop what they are doing to examine the patient simultaneously. It's a massive waste of energy, as you can imagine. For a mixture of experts, it splits the hospital into specialized wards. So hash routing is the emergency triage desk at the front door. The triage nurse doesn't run deep diagnostic tests. They simply look at your wristband ID and instantly put you down or with A or with B. Zero delay and zero wasted manpower. Once you are inside, the router acts as a chief medical officer. The chief officer evaluates your symptom and then he picks only 6 top specialists required for your exact issue out of the 256 available, leaving the other 250 doctors asleep. Flash supports a 1 million context window, so this means you can drop your entire software repository into your prompt. Historically, as you must have known, this would cause your GPU memory to start acting out. To solve this, DeepSeek uses a hybrid memory system, which is the compressed path attention known as the CSA, and then the heavily compressed attention, which is the HCA. For the CSA, it compresses the history of your prompt into a highly detailed index. If the AI needs a specific variable from file 40, for example, in your code base, the CSA retrieves that exact detail instantly. For the heavily compressed attention, which is the HCA, it handles things at the macro level. It aggressively squashes massive chunks of your prompt into a tiny compact summary. It specifically fine-tunes those details to give the AI a global overview of what it wants, scanning through almost at zero memory overhead. By switching between the two, V4 Flash handles a million token effortlessly. To go back to our medical hospital analogy, think of this hybrid attention system as the medical record department handling a patient's lifetime history. So now, CSA is the deep archive retrieval system. When a doctor needs to find a specific blood pressure reading from 5 years ago on page 84 of your medical file, the CSA acts as an instant index search that pulls that exact line without making the doctor reread your entire life history. While HCA is like a one-page summary chart that can be clicked to the foot of your bed. It comprises years of medical history into a few bullet points, so you can just glance into it and then get an overall trajectory of your health without going into those minor details. As you stack more layers into this AI, the signal starts to degrade. To prevent this, V4 uses the manifold constraint hyperconnection. MHC creates multiple internal streams of information between layers while applying strict mathematical constraint that ensures the signal stays perfectly stable and balances all the way through the network, prevents the model from hallucinating or losing its train of thought during complex multi-step logic. Now, what's all these complications? So let's go back to our hospital analogy. Without MHC, if a doctor on floor 2 starts shouting an order down to floor 43, nobody hears it because between floor 2 and floor 3 there's been a whole messed up of communication. So what MHC does is that it replaces those noisy stairwells with a dedicated multi-lane pneumatic tube system that connects every floor. More importantly, it adds automated traffic controllers, so these are like your mathematical constraints to guarantee that the exact message sent from the second floor arrives at the 43rd floor without losing a single word. So if this architecture didn't change on July 31st, why is 0731 such a big deal? Well, it all comes down to the post-training. A model-based architecture is just raw horsepower. Post-training is where you actually teach the model how to drive. DeepSeek took the 13 billion active model and subjected it into an intensive realignment phase. This was specifically focused on autonomous agents, terminal commands, and repository creation. The result of this is that the benchmark jumped up violently. On Terminal Bench 2.1, the previous version scored 61.8. The 0731 release scored 82.7. It even surpassed the 1.6 trillion parameters for V4 Pro preview, which scored 72.1 in software engineering issues and resolution, and some multi-tool orchestration. At just 14 cents per million token, DeepSeek V4 Flash changes everything. You don't need a 15 billion active parameters to manage your codebase anymore. The power comes from the architecture, but the real genius is in the training. If this was helpful, hit the like button, drop a comment with what you are building on 0721 release, and subscribe for more deep dive into frontier AI. See you in the next one. Bye.